So, we've learned how economists use a demand curve to model demand. Changes in price only cause movements along the demand curve. The changes were known as contractions and extensions in demand. Shifts in the demand curve were caused by changes in the conditions of demand, for example, income levels and advertising. Now we will be learning about price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand measures the responsiveness or sensitivity of demand for a good or service to a change in the price of that good or service. In other words, price elasticity of demand is a number that tells us how much we can expect the demand for a good or service to change when the price of that good or service changes. If demand is said to be price elastic, demand for a good changes by more than the price, where demand and price changes are measured in percentage terms. Economists say that when demand is elastic, a change in price will lead to a more than proportionate change in demand. If demand is price inelastic, demand for a good changes by less than the price of a good. Economists say that when demand is price inelastic, a change in price will lead to a less than proportionate change in demand. Here are some examples of goods that have either elastic or inelastic demand. On the left hand side, we have some examples of inelastic goods. For these types of goods, we can expect price changes to lead to a less than proportionate change in demand. In other words, when the price of the good changes, demand won't change as much as the price did. On the right hand side, we can see some examples of elastic goods. For these types of goods, we can expect that changes in price will lead to a more than proportionate change in demand. In other words, when the price of the good changes, demand will change by more than the price. It might be a good idea to pause here and think about why the goods on the left are price inelastic and why the goods on the right are price elastic. The most important factor that affects the price elasticity of demand for a good or service is whether it is a luxury or a necessity. Items that we need, such as medicine and fuel, are price inelastic, as even when the price of these goods change, our demand won't change as much, as we need these goods and services. On the other hand, luxury goods, such as jewelry, may be price elastic, as when the price of these goods increases, for example, demand would probably fall by more than the price increased because we don't need these goods. If a good or a service doesn't have many substitutes, we can expect demand for that good or service to be price inelastic. For example, there is no substitute for water, as all human beings need water to survive. So if the price of water changed by 20%, for example, we'd expect demand to change by less, maybe 5%. Certain goods are habitual, like nicotine products. Therefore, when the price of these goods increases, demand may fall, but by less than the price increased by, because people are addicted. Time can also have an impact on the price elasticity of demand for a good or service. For example, if you need surgery straight away, even if the price of that surgery increased, your demand may not fall because you don't have time to find any substitutes. Certain goods are inexpensive, for example paper clips, and we spend a very low percentage of our overall income on these goods. If the price of a paperclip changed from 2p to 3p, for example, which is 50%, we may not expect our demand to change for paper clips by as much. This is because we spend such a low amount of our overall income on this good. But for a house, for example, if the price of a house went up by 50%, we would expect demand to change by a lot more than the increase in the price, because we spend a much larger overall percentage of our income on houses than we do on paper clips. Brand loyalty can also make the demand for a good or service more inelastic. A good example of this would be Apple products. Because Apple has brand loyalty, their customers are willing to pay higher prices when Apple increase the price, and therefore demand for Apple products doesn't go down as much as they increase their prices, again due to the strong brand loyalty that they've created amongst their customers. PED is just a number that tells us how much demand for a good or service will change relative to a change in the price of the good or service. To calculate this number, we divide the percentage change in the quantity demanded for a good by the percentage change in the price of a good or service. The PED is therefore just a ratio of how much demand changes compared to price. The PED will always be negative because of the inverse relationship between price and quantity demanded. Therefore, when one of the numbers in the formula is positive, the other will always be negative, which means the PED itself will always give you a negative number. Ignoring the sign, if the PED gives us a value more than 1, demand for a good has changed by more than the price, meaning the good is price elastic. If the PED value is less than 1, that means that demand has changed by less than the price, and therefore the good is considered to be price inelastic. The bigger the number, the more elastic the good or service is. Here's an example of some data from which you can calculate the price elasticity of demand for a good. See if you can work out the price elasticity of demand for the good, remembering that in order to calculate percentage change, you calculate the difference between your new value and your original value as a percentage of your original value. Good luck. So, let's see how we get the answer. First, we have to work out the difference between our new demand for PS5s, which in this case is 700, and our original value, which is 1000. That gives us minus 300. Then we work out the difference between the two values as a percentage of the original value, which in this case was 1000. Minus 300 over 1000 as a percentage is minus 30%. Then we have to work out the difference between our new price for PS5s, which in this case is £600, and our original price of the PS5, which is £500, giving us £100. Then we work out the difference between the two prices as a percentage of the original price, which in this case is £500. 100 over 500 as a percentage would give us plus 20%. Now we can plug these values into our formula to work out the PED, which gives us minus 30% because demand went down by 30%, divided by 20% because we worked out price increased by 20%, and that gives us a number of minus 1.5. Notice that, ignoring the sign, when PED is more than 1, the demand for a good must change by more than the price of the good. So anytime the PED gives us a value more than 1, we know that the good is price elastic because demand changed by more than price. Now let's have a go at calculating the PED for a good for which demand is price inelastic. Pause the video here to work out the answer, then I will show you how to do the calculations. When the PED of a number is between 0 and 1, it means that demand changes by less than price, and therefore demand is price inelastic. Total revenue is the income generated by a business. You need to understand the relationship between the price elasticity of demand for a good or service and the impact that price changes will then have on the total revenue that a business receives. When the demand for a good is price elastic, demand changes by more than the price of the good. This means that if a firm increases price, demand will fall by more than the price increased, meaning the total amount of revenue the business or the firm makes will fall. On the other hand, if a firm decreases its price, demand will increase by more than the price fell by, meaning the firm's total revenue will increase. Therefore, firms that produce goods for which demand is price elastic do not want to increase prices, as it means that their revenues will decrease, and would rather decrease prices to earn more revenue. When the demand for a good is price inelastic, demand changes by less than the price of the good. This means that if a firm increases price, demand will fall by less than the price increase, meaning the total amount of revenue that the firm makes will increase. On the other hand, if a firm decreases its price, demand will increase by less than the price decreased by, meaning the firm's total revenues will decrease. Therefore, firms that produce goods for which demand is price inelastic do want to increase prices, as it means that their total revenues will increase, and would rather not decrease prices, as this will lead to a fall in total revenue. If demand for a good or service is unit elastic, a 1% change in price leads to a 1% change in demand. Therefore, the PD of goods and services that are unit elastic is -1. If the demand for a good is unit elastic, changes in prices will have no impact on the firm's total revenue. This is because a 1% decrease in price will be cancelled out by a 1% increase in demand, meaning firms' revenues will remain unchanged. We can draw demand curves to indicate whether the demand for a good or service is elastic or inelastic. If the demand for a good is price elastic, remember a change in price will lead to a more than proportionate change in demand. In other words, when the price of a good changes, demand will change by more than the price changed. I've drawn an elastic demand curve in this example, showing that a change in price has led to a more than proportionate change in demand. Therefore, elastic demand curves are flat, showing that demand on the x-axis changes more than price on the y-axis. If the demand for a good is price inelastic, remember a change in price will lead to a less than proportionate change in demand. In other words, when the price of a good changes, demand will change by less than the price changed. In this case, I've drawn an inelastic demand curve, showing that a change in price has led to a less than proportionate change in demand. Therefore, inelastic demand curves are steep, showing that price on the y-axis is changing more than demand on the x-axis.